talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Wednesday night, which means it is retro night, and as always, we pick a team back on matches between us and them. And it is Wolverhampton Wanderers tonight that we are looking at. And as always, we pick celebrity fans, get the guys to try and guess who they are, and also pick players that played for both teams and get the guys then to pick an 11 combined at the end. And as always, we listen to the recollections from the lads of games gone by. So, George, welcome to the show. As always, it's over to you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to have a personal recollection of Wolves from my own time at St James's Park. 1957, I'd played a few games in the juniors and in the A team and the B team. And on this particular weekend, I've got a postcard to report to St James's Park on the Friday night, which meant I was going with the Ends, which is the team that everybody wanted to be in, all the young people, because the young professionals were in the Ends team. And we're going off to play a friendly with Wolves. And it went on a Friday night because Ted Hughes didn't like to get up early on a Saturday morning. So you always got a night in a hotel and a proper breakfast. And we went to play this game with Wolves. And the other thing that Ted Hughes used to do is if anybody at the match, important, if he could get them to come into the dressing room and talk to the lads, he would do it. And in this game, we're playing at Wolves' training ground, which is now the academy and all of that. It's about 2 miles away from Molyneux, but it was just a basic, a nice field and a collection of huts for dressing rooms. Anyway, we played this game and it was 1-0 to Wolves at half time. And Ted Hughes said, "Oh, get ready, there's somebody coming in." And in walked this guy, and immediately from the gruff voice and so on, it was Stan Cullis, the Wolves manager, an old player. And he came round, he bit like Joe Harvey. He didn't have an awful lot to say to the lads, but it was still nice to see him and shake his hand and all the rest of it. But before he went out, the door opened again, and in walked another guy, this time immaculately dressed, perfectly groomed, with a beautiful speaking voice. And of course, it was none other than Billy Wright, the England captain, who was also the Wolves captain. So what a thrill it was to meet him. What a gentleman. And he did have something to say to most of the lads. And, it was gobsmacking really for young kids like me to meet somebody like that. So that was a personal recollection for Wolves. My first game is way back in 1949. The Chicken Road Academy was in full tilt, telling us for the Wolves match I was going to see some of the best players in the world. You know, Bert Williams, Billy Wright, Swinburne, Jesse Pye, Mullen, left wing for England as well, and of course Cullis was the manager. I think you've got the programme front, Steve, was the first thing. I managed to get this cover for the programme off the internet, and actually I must have had that one at home for years before my mother decided to throw them all out. And so I've been told that this was going to be a great game with fantastic players. And so we went to this match, 56,051 playing. And our team was Garbutt, Graham, Batty, Dodgen, Brennan, Crowe, Milburn, Taylor, George Robledo, George Hanna, and Bobby Mitchell. And of course, our manager was the one and only George Martin, the opera singing manager that we used to have. For those who didn't know that he was Rutherford and Westwood and Seymour went to see the manager at Theatre Royal, who was running the operetta La Rusticana on the Theatre Royal, and went and told the manager at Theatre Royal that their football manager could sing the lead better than his lead singer. and they persuaded him to give him an audition. And lo and behold, after his audition, the Theatre Royal manager signed him, and he spent the whole week doing the lead in La Rusticana rather than being manager of Newcastle. Could only happen in Newcastle United. Newcastle United, and what a success he was. And apparently, that just like what he was when they went anywhere on boats or buses, he always used to entertain everybody. Anyway, it wasn't the match that I was expecting or anybody was expecting. It was quite a dull game. Really, nothing to be terribly excited about, except that we won, which my family weren't expecting us to win because Wolves were challenging for the top of the league at this particular time, and for just about everything else as well. In fact, there was the newspaper I read, and it said that what a dismal display it was. So dismal that the two smallest blokes on the field scored the goals. That was Early Taylor and George Hanna, and were the top men on the pitch. And so all the great England internationals just didn't turn it on. It just was not a very, very good game. We won 2-0. As I say, Taylor and Hanna scored the goals. And at the end of that season, Portsmouth won the league for the second year in a row with 53 points. Wolves were second with 53 points, but on worse goal difference. The Mackhams were third on 52. Manchester United were next with 50. And we were next to Manchester United on 50 as well, with just a poorer goal difference. But it was for two teams that were pressing at the top of the league. The match I went to see in 24th of December of 1949 didn't live up to the billing, I'm afraid. But at least we won, and it was a day to remember, and something for everybody to talk about on the way home. But not a great match, but a one I do remember going to, because by then I was old enough to remember these things. And 56,051 spectators joined in as well. So that's my first match, lads. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff, George. Steve Hasty, mate, your first recollection of Newcastle versus Wolves.
Right. My first recollection was one of the first games we played after the 74 FA Cup final, when we got beat off Liverpool. So 74-75 season starts, Wolverhampton Wanderers away. And like all starts of the season, you've got high hopes. You think, this is it. You've just come from the cup final. This is where we're heading. And we stepped out at Molineux and we got beat 4-2. And the reason I've picked it is because John Tudor put 2 goals away from home and ended up on the losing side. And the other 4 goals for the opposition were all scored by one player. He's called Hibbett. But unfortunately, it wasn't Terry Hibbett. Fortunately for Terry, it wasn't Terry Hibbett. It was his brother. And the reason I chose it as well is because as 2 Yorkshiremen, the rivalry that those 2 lads had among themselves, older brother, younger brother, was something not to be missed. Because in all of the times they played for Newcastle, with one of them playing on the right wing and one playing on the left wing, I don't think either of them ever shirked a tackle against each other. That for me sums up what it was like in the 70s, a professional footballer. You went out and you gave 100%, whether you were kicking lumps out of your brother, or you were kicking lumps out of the bloke at the bottom of the street, or you were kicking lumps out of a superstar. It didn't really matter. That's the way that you played football. But on this particular game, as I say, we turned up. We thought we were in with a big chance. I look at the team now, and it's a fair team that were put out that particular August afternoon. Excuse me. We've got McFall in goal. We've got Natris and Kennedy as what became 2 regular fullbacks for us for the rest of the 70s before Kennedy went off into European glory with Liverpool. We had Pat Howard and Glenn Keeley at the back, 2 centre-backs. We had a midfield of Terry Mack, Jinky Jim Smith, Mickey Burns, and Terry Hibbett wide on the left. And then, of course, we had Suter Mack and John Tudor up front. So it was a fair team that we put out that particular day. But to get turned over by a team where one player scores 4 goals, I think in the history of football, that's the sort of game that you do have to, you have to turn around to the opposition and say, well done. it's quite an achievement to score 4 goals in a season these days for some players. And yet there we've got a midfielder who scored 4 goals against Newcastle at home. Excuse me. So that's my first game that I've chosen. Sadly, a defeat. But that was the reason I picked it was because 74 was round about the time after the cup final that you started to go to the match on your own. You were trusted to by your mum and dad. We've talked about this many a time, Steve, with yourself. But it's kind of you're passing into that next age group, aren't you? You know, that level of responsibility, etc. Yeah. And we used to stand on the Gallagher end, me and my pals. But that particular game, obviously an away game, and brings you back down to earth again when you get beat 4-2 away from home. So
yeah, it does.
That's my first one. Rattle it off dead quick for you. So I know we're on a time scale, so.
Yeah, because again, this is a pre-record. Usually we do this one live, but busy week this week with the anniversary and obviously a couple of games as well. Tomorrow, last night, at Rotherham, and then Friday, of course, at Burton. So busy week this week. A few pre-records. Apologies to those of you in the live chat. Stu, on to you for your first game.
Well, my first game follows on from the game we talked about last week. The team last week was Barnsley. So the week after Barnsley, we played Millwall at home, and we struggled to get a draw. Although we had the possession, we just managed to get a late equaliser. So this is the 92 season where we ran away with the league. And we're now in a spell where we haven't won for 2 games, and it's Boxing Day 1992. We are... I've still got my broken wrist, obviously. We're double figures clear at the top of the league, and the feel-good factor's there. We've got a bump as it used to be. The crowds at Christmas and Easter were always higher for the home games. So the crowd was over 30,000, I think, might have been for the first time that season. And we're thinking, right, this is it. You know, everything's going to plan. And then Wolves score from it. It was a good finish, to be fair. I can't remember the name of the lad who scored it, but I remember it was an angled drive and it was a good finish. So then you can be mistaken for thinking that it's alarm bells you can hear, not jingle bells at that time of year. But then you just think, well, I mean, which team's realistically going to blow a 12-point lead at Christmas? You know, it's not going to happen, is it? So we're going to this, moving on. We're getting to the games, and Liam O'Brien's just he smacked an effort from just outside the box. I'd say about 25 yards. The keeper's parried and it's bounced out, and it was one of the good old-fashioned goal-mouth scrambles that's here, there, everywhere. Gets kicked off one person. Ned Kelly's managed to get it over the line, but once he's done that, it got cleared off the line, and young Ashley Clark, he's just smacked it into the roof of the net. He proper launched it as well. And as we all know, he didn't score that many. So he's away, hop, skipped and jumped to the Gallagher to celebrate. And I think it was only Kevin Brock, I think, that ran over to him. Everyone else knew Kelly had already scored and ran to Kelly. And Clark is turned out to take all the adulation and realise that David Kelly was getting it instead. So that was the first goal there. That was the equaliser. Then we, as that team did, O'Keegan's team did many times, they ramped it up. And it was exhibition football for the rest of the game. And the winner was also scored by Kelly from what wasn't really Newcastle-style football at the time. It was like a hopeful punt upfield. And the defenders misjudged it. And it bounced nicely for Kelly. And what I remember, when he scored the goal, it was like a outstretched foot volley, but he managed to get some pace behind it, and it rocketed at the top of the net. But it was a goal that would score by many forwards around about that time, or even before that. It was Lineker. It was synonymous with him, and the Kerry Dixons, the Tony Cotties, and even McQuinn that we had as well. So they seem to score a lot of goals like that. You don't see as many of it now. Maybe it's the defenders can defend. So it was Kelly to the double, and Christmas was worth celebrating. And off we went out round the town on the Boxing Day. So that was my first game with Wolves. Boxing Day 92-93 season.
Good stuff. Okay, Mitch, on to you for your first recollection.
My first recollection is actually from the season before, and it shows a huge change in the mentality of the team from the season before to what Stu's just talking about. This was a horribly wet and grim Tuesday night at Wolverhampton, at Molineux. It was absolutely tipping down before the game, and it was messy as hell. There was all sorts going on around the ground. Battles in the car park. You know, getting into the ground was sort of a celebration in itself. And it was a strange time. I think it was on the back of beating the Mackhams, and I think we'd be doing okay, and we looked like we were going to avoid sort of relegation comfortably. But this result started a run of about, I think, 5 games where we didn't pick a point up and put we're back into the mire. That all ended with that mad game at Derby that we've talked about before on here. But on the night, everybody talks about Steve Bull when they talk about Wolves. But this was all about his strike partner, Andy Much. To be fair, the game could have ended 6-5. It was one of those games, and I guess it shows the fallibility of Keegan's team when he starts to really chuck people forward. But the game script went like this. After 6 minutes, we were 1-0 down by Much. By 12 minutes, he'd scored a second with a fluky deflection. But then 2 minutes later, Mick Quinn, looking a mile offside, managed to pull back to 2-1. It was 3-1 from just about half hour. A guy called Bennett getting the ball, which was a lovely pullback from Steve Bull. And then the second half didn't start very well. Cook made it 4-1 after 49 minutes. But then the game sort of stabilised a bit. We got one back on 73 minutes, and that was when Keegan decided to go for it. Peacock made it 4-2. And then he sort of chucked caution to the wind, and we started to have a go. But then it all fell to pieces in the last 5 minutes. 85 minutes, Much got his hat-trick with another fluky deflection. And then, of course, Steve Bull had to wrap it up to make it 6-2 to Wolves. And apparently that was the first time the Wolves had scored 5 without Bull contributing since 1987. So, and this is what I remember, games against Wolves were always... either, whether it's just the games I've been to, we'll either scrape a nice victory off them or get thumped off them. It's one or the other. It never seems to be halfway, anywhere between. And I've got a terrible record as Molineux, as my next game would tell you about.
It was a right Clarky pitch that day as well, Mitch, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was horrible. It was a horrible night as well. You went home soaked to the skin. It was just that horrible Midlands rain, which really soaks you. It really makes you cold on the bus on the way back and all. It was horrible.
I was thinking Peter Kay sketch that. It's that kind of rain that wets you right through. Yeah, Steve Wilkinson, over to you for your first recollection of Newcastle Wolves.
Well, my game's sort of linked in some ways with Steve's because he mentioned about a player scoring 4 and how rare that is. Well, would you believe it happened again in the game on the 1st of January 1989? This time again a Wolves player, and the name that Steve's just been talking about, Steve Bull, quite a prolific scorer around about that time and played for England as well. But it was a strange game. I don't know whether we have a hangover. I don't think we've got a great record around about Christmas and New Year. It's sometimes as if we're on the drink, and maybe that was what happened here, because it seems certainly like a hangover game, particularly in the second half with the defence. The game, we could have been ahead. In fact, we should have been ahead because it was a missed penalty by Mickey Quinn in the first half that should have put us ahead. Mark McGee had been brought down, and Mickey Quinn took the penalty, hit it straight at the keeper. A very poor penalty, actually. He didn't put any angle on it at all, although it was a fair pace. And there was another chance to have scored. The keeper made a point blank range for a header from Liam O'Brien. So we could have gone in ahead, comfortably winning at half time. And at that stage, you just had no idea what was about to happen, and it was a blitz within a quarter of an hour of the second half. We're losing 3-0. All 3 goals by Steve Bull, and it was all defensive errors that caused it. They were giving the ball away. They weren't picking them up. There was a corner came in on one of the goals, and John Burridge, who was in goal, went up for it. And I think the defender clashed with him, and it bounced back to the far post where Steve Bull was standing unmarked. So we're 3-0 down after an hour, and I can remember that feeling that everybody was stunned that we'd gone from what should have been a comfortable victory to actually getting slaughtered at this stage. Game match was over effectively with a half an hour left. We managed to pull a one back with quite a good goal, actually. Kevin Brock I love. I think I've mentioned this before. I love seeing free kicks going in from outside the box, and it was a good one from an angle, and it went straight in the top corner. But that was a short-lived celebration because 2 minutes later, lo and behold, another defensive error left Steve Bull unmarked on a breakaway from the back, threw ball into him without anybody within about 5 yards of him, and he just ran round and went round Burridge and tapped into empty net. So we lost 4-1. And it was strange that was the season that, as you might remember, we ultimately ended up in the third spot and getting into the playoffs. Unfortunately, we know what happened there. But the significant blip on that route towards getting to that position was this thrashing at home. As Mitch says, we either win or we get a thrashing, or we draw ones each, which seems to be the case these days. But this was another thrashing by Wolves at home.
Yeah, a game that I was at and a game that I remember for all those reasons, and absolutely horrendous to watch Newcastle capitulate like that at home. But as you say, we pulled it round to get into third place, but unfortunately came a cropper in the playoffs, something which we've talked about a couple of times on this show before. Big shout out to the sponsors, Spider VPN. Google Spider VPN. They come up at the top of your Google search. They can help protect your passwords and everything else on your computer. Big thanks to them for sponsoring for the last few months, and they are continuing to sponsor into August. Thanks to skipsandbins.com as well for being a main sponsor. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay as you go waste collection. Also, get well soon. John from QTech still in hospital with COVID. QTechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend. He's had a nasty spell of this, a nasty variant. Water's come off his lungs, we've been told now, but he's on the road to recovery, we hope, but not been good at all for John from QTech, so big shout out to him. He also runs our website, of course, NUFCmatters.com. Get yourself onto there if you want to buy a t-shirt. Plenty of choice on the t-shirt front, and NUFCmatters.com. Big thanks as well to John from Jab Signature for reliably doing our flyers at the drop of a hat. He has already put together our Happy Days Fab 4 poster for Friday's show. So there we go. Steve, me, Keith, and Neil, all with some rather good hair. Neil, you actually look exactly the same as you normally do there. Pretty good, yeah, I like that. Plenty of stuff on the channel as well. Coming up at the weekend, I have done an interview with Kelly Maloney, which is a fascinating insight into what she believes is going to happen with boxing. It's a crucial time for the sport at the moment with lockdown over, but restrictions still very much a part of boxing life, and it means small hall shows like the one that I put on are impossible to do. And if you didn't watch it live yesterday morning, catch up with my interview with Sean Atwood, one of the top podcasters in the UK, 670,000 followers. His account was struck off twice last week, but he is back and doing what he does best. Have a chat with Sean and asked him quite a few questions about that situation, but you asked your questions as well. Well worth a watch. And don't forget, Thursday night, as always, I am back live with Super Mac and Gibbo, taking your questions on Newcastle United, looking back at the game against Rotherham and looking ahead to the Burton Albion game on Friday night. And don't forget, we are creeping towards our talk-ins. There is one at Bobix for the food bank, www.bobix.com. Still tickets left for that, £10. Come and see me and Liam talk about Newcastle United and the season ahead. Steve Hastie's going to be along there and a few other people from the food bank. And also, if you get onto Farmhouse Kitchens, Twitter or Facebook, get your tickets, limited tickets now for that talk-in with me and Supermac on the 19th of August. Again, tickets £10 for that. And if you want to book last minute to go to Burton on Friday, Shambles Travels have still got a few spaces left on the bus. Give Amanda a ring on 0779 141 779. That's 0779 141 779. Okay, George, back to you, mate, for your second story about Wolves.
Well, first of all, I was sorry to hear about John. I do hope he's on the mend. That's good to hear if he's getting better. Right, next one is a little further down the line. I picked it. I'd seen other Wolves matches before this one, but I picked this one because it was a game when I felt that one of our unsung heroes, as you were, actually showed what he could do. September the 20th, 1975, we played Wolves and we beat them 5-1. 29,834 in the ground, and what an exciting game it was. And it was stood out because Alan Gowland scored a hat-trick. He was almost unplayable. I always felt that Alan came to us as a failed Busby Babe in some ways, and then it took a while to recover from that. But he never stopped worked his socks off every game I've seen him play. And certainly in this one, he didn't just work his socks off. He showed what a great deal of skill he had. And of course, he needed him because Supermac wasn't getting played because we had a manager called Gordon Lee who decided he didn't like Supermac. And of course, ultimately, as we all know, sold him for the £333,333.33. And so we needed someone to step up and take the game by the scruff of the neck. That particular season, 75, Alan Gowland was the top scorer. 31 goals he scored. Supermac, by the time he left, had 24, but as I say, he wasn't being played very often. The team was interested as well, not too far away from Steve's team. Mahoney, Natras, Kennedy, Nulty, Bird, Howard, Burns, Gowland, Tudor, Cassidy, or Craig and Cassidy. The other two goals were Tudor and Cassidy, and Steve Daly scored the Wolves goal. But we just absolutely tore them apart, largely because Alan Gowland was difficult to play, impossible to play. Their team had Kelly Hibbett was in the team, and Alan Sunderland, who won a cup final for somebody else later on. But their manager, of course, in this game was none other than Bill McGarry, who we came to know very well. I found it interesting that in the some of the official commentaries about this match when I read our team, some of the official records were saying that Richard Dinnis was our manager at the time. Well, I think he had been, but Gordon Lee had just taken over and became the well-loved person that he was on Tyneside. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. The season was not a brilliant one for us either. 15th, Wolves were 20th and went down as the third team. Liverpool won the title. QPR was second, believe it or not. Manchester United third. And then when you look down the league at that particular time, there were teams like Ipswich and Charlton and Leeds all around the top of the league where they suddenly all disappeared. We hung on to 15th, but Wolves couldn't hang on because they went on to have a really, really bad season. So, as I say, I was pleased to see Alan Gowland have his come to the front. I think the match he deserved. And that's my second game from the 20th of September, 75. 5-1.
Great stuff, George. Cheers, Steve Hasty.
Right. January 1979, I've gone for FA Cup, fourth round. 29,561 passionate Geordies piling in because we'd won in the third round. We'd beaten Torquay, a resounding victory, 3-1. So we all turned up in the fourth round thinking, this is it. This is the cup. Come on, lads. We're going to do it. It was also an interesting game because, and Stu, you know what I'm coming from here. When you go to the match with the mates and you've been to George and Dragon, which was the pub we used to go to beforehand. You've had a few beers and then you get in and you decide, because it's the cup, you're going to go into the Leazes End for a change. So we're piled into the Leazes End, and after about 20 minutes, because we got in late, we were standing at the back, we couldn't really see very well. So we decided to sit on the wall. Bad move to sit on the wall because you know what's going to happen. You're just going to get chased. Sure enough, 20 minutes, half an hour in, coppers come along, start giving you the tap from the back, get off the wall, big stick he's got, he's banging you against the back. So, of course, there's 4 or 5 on the back wall. 4 of them went down one side, which is what you would do, into the crowd, and then you can drift away. But one of the lads decides to come down the other side. Well, that's the worst thing you can do at the Leazer's end, is to come down on the other side, because the coppers are all just standing there. So next thing you know, he's gone. He's out the door. He's been carted off. All for sitting on the wall. That was what it was like in those days. You step out the lane and you grabbed, your colours felt, and you chucked out into the park, And that's what happened to our pal Peter. Anyway, I digress. It took until the 70th minute before we managed to score. Great goal. Absolutely brilliant goal. Lovely move. Excuse me. You can see it on YouTube, actually. If you want to reminisce, it's a lovely little bit of interplay in midfield involving Mick Martin. Plays the ball out to John Brownlee, who sends over a fairly deep but floating cross, and lands on a stooping head of Peter With, who stoops down and just drives the ball straight past the goalkeeper. Power, everything. And the momentum of With running and duking down to get the ball, as he steps up, he jumps to cheer and grabs a hold of the crossbar. And he does the old John McNamee, and he has a bit swing from the Leazer's end crossbar. And, of course, everybody's going absolutely crazy. And you're thinking, that's it, really. But 6 minutes from time, what happens? Up steps that man again, Kenny Hibbert. And with a lovely interplay move, lovely pass, 1, 2, 3, 4, lands on Hibbert's foot. All he's got to do is hit it with his right, and boy, does he hit it. Sweet as a volley after playing a lovely 1-2 on the edge of the box. And there you are, 1-1. And what happens? We'll go to a replay, and you know what's going to come next, guys. Yep, we'll lose the replay. We'll lose it down at Molineux. Obviously, Kenny Hibbert's the main instigator of a defeat again. If I look at the team this time, we've got Hardwick in goal. We've got Irvin Natras at fullback, along with John Brownlee, who would brought from Scotland. We've got Blackley and Barton, not the fighting Barton that we know of today, but a different Barton, obviously, no relation. But a young lad playing it at centre half. We've got Mitchell playing. We've got a young lad called Guy, who's playing in midfield, a youngster. Obviously, it's the cup. McGarry's the manager, and he's decided to blood a few lads. We've got Terry Hibbert and Mick Martin in the midfield. And up front, we've got Peter Wade and another youngster called Robinson. So there's a blend there, it's the cup. That's what tends to happen. I think we just kind of ran out of ideas. I think we didn't have the experience on the pitch at the time to be able to withhold a 1-0 win. We couldn't hold the 1-goal lead in that last 6 minutes. I think the pressure kind of got to him, probably the youngsters in the team. On the subs bench that day was a certain Mark McGee, who went away and came back. He was only a young lad at the time, but he came back a far better player than he did in first time around. But again, another cup run, another exciting, getting into the 4th round, and you start to dream again. And Newcastle United pulled the carpet from under your feet. A 1-1 cup draw, followed by a defeat at Molineux in the following day. Incidentally, Wolves went on to get the semi-final that year. They played some good football all through that season, got the semi-final, got beat off Arsenal, who went on to win the cup. George mentioned it just earlier there. They played Man United in what was one of the most amazing cup finals, if you remember. A team going 2-0 up. And then the last 3 minutes, I think 86th minute, 2-1 Man United, 88th minute, 2-2. And then Man United think that's it. We're gonna absolutely, obliterate these in extra time because Arsenal were dead and buried. And up popped that man Sunderland who scored in the 89th, and it was 1-3-2. So we got beat off a team who eventually got into semi-final anyway. So we can't really complain, I suppose. But that's my game.
Always makes you feel a bit better, I suppose. But, only a little bit. Stu, your second game, mate.
Well, if Steve Hasty isn't going to complain, I'll do it for him now. So If the first game I'm talking about was the 92-93 season, which was probably the start of that good times era we had under the Keegan and Robsons. So this game is probably the last season, I would say it signified the end of the good times. And it was the 2003-2004. And this, to me, had been a problem because the crowd or the ground had grown, which meant the crowd had grown. And, you know, I talked about it when we covered Southampton. You know, this game was the last home game of the season. We had Southampton away midweek and then Liverpool away the following week. And if we won all three, we're in the Champions League. That's how close we were. That was the simplicity of it all. Not that Newcastle do simple things simple at all. So similar to George's last story, Wolves were relegated this year. And Newcastle have got Wolves at home, as I mentioned, last game of the season. They've got nothing to play for. We go 1-0 up, and it was probably one of Shola's best games that I'd seen him play. It's not often you can say Shola had a really good game, but it was something that one of those games he had where everything he tried come off. He could control the ball instead of like bouncing off his feet for about 10 yards. His passing was good. He was up for it. He was shooting. He was accurate. And we're 1-0 up. There's a through Lee Boyer, not through Shola, but Shola had created it. And just lo and behold, we're thinking, right, that's it. We've got this game under wraps now. We can start resting players, etc., or take it a bit easy. Big game at Southampton midweek. It's the early part of the second half. Wolves equalise. So then the Alamo started. You know, we all know Bobby Robson had the team all motivated. The players were led by, you know, the Speeds, the Shearers, the Givens. There was leaders all over the pitch. So there was never a question about the attitude or the desire to win. So we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And their keeper had an amazing game. And then we got a penalty. And you think, well, this is it, isn't it? Well, who's going to take the penalty? Come off the hour, come off the man. Up stepped Mr. Alan Shearer. And he missed. And we end up drawn. Oh, you've got a picture? Well, we go. Yeah, we missed another Clarty pitch, to be fair. But we end up drawn. But what annoyed us at the end of this, like I said, this is the last game of the season. We still could win at Southampton, win at Liverpool, and win in the Champions League. But we drew this game. We drew all three games, actually. But had we won two with them, we only finished 4 points behind Liverpool. So we would have been in the Champions League. Taking the fact that if we beat Liverpool, then definitely with the plus-minus goal difference. But the thing that really annoyed us, what I want to moan about, is at the end of the game, it's last game of the season, you have your traditional lap of honour from the players, the staff, etc. And a lot of people are left, you know, because they weren't entertained. You know, it's a Saturday afternoon. You know, not many would have a pressing matter to get home for unless the wife had to get the gala bingo or something, you know. So the majority would stay. But a lot of people are left. And what really, really annoyed us is some of the ones that stayed decided to boo the players. Now, if you look back now with the players, I mean, I just mentioned some before, but running through the team, you're talking about some of the best players that have ever graced, well, definitely in my lifetime anyway, but ever graced the turf wearing black and white. And these players were booed, and it's just circumstances. Had that penalty went in, we've already covered the Southampton game. If we could have and should have won that, we're in the Champions League, and you're booing a team that we've never had anything like it again, of the quality. And then we're going to the start of the following season, and 4 games into it, you know, someone has a brainwave, Mr. Shepherd, to sack Bobby Robson. And I'm not just bitter because Carver had to go as well, and that's me lounge tickets gone, you know. But it just shows you the short-sightedness and the greed in football, and how football's run by people who don't actually understand football. You know, the people in the crowd there. And that's my only fear about what's happening now. That the crowds will grow. We might get a new stadium, etc. New people will come, and they'll just demand to be entertained and start booing. That team did not deserve to be booed. You know, that team was like that close that you're talking a cigarette paper's breath away from qualifying for the Champions League. Imagine that now. You know, if we even got close to it, if we got the top half, we'd be doing cartwheels all season. So the fact that the boot is really, really annoyed us, considering some of the games we've talked about on this show, you know, the away games, like some of the games we haven't. You know, beat the Chesterfield on a Tuesday night, and you know all these games, and you get people wanting to boo them for just missing out or look like we'll just miss out in the Champions League at that stage. So that's my moan. It's not a rant, it's a moan, and that's me finished. So I'll pass you over. That's me done.
Yeah, I am rather proud to say that although Alan Shearer's penalty was saved, I did manage to score mine the following day when I did record Goal, the movie. I played Barthez in that as an extra before I became a professional actor. But I did happen to score a penalty at the Gallagher end. If I can find the link, I'll stick it down in the description box below. I obviously playing in goal, but during the break in filming, I did manage to step up and belt mine in. It was over a guy who was only about 5'1", like, but yeah, it wasn't under the same pressure as Alan.
Steve?
Yeah, carrying a bit of weight then, mate.
Oh, carry pair of shoulders on you there, son.
Well, that's a rather complimentary photograph. If you saw it from a side angle, in fact, when you see the footage, I will post the link underneath. It's dear me, how that
Probably
photo.
have a kite like mine.
That did prompt me to make sure that health changes were imminent. Put it that way. Mitch, on to you for your second story.
I'm going to go to the season before that Stu's just been talking about, and it's got links to the game that Steve talked about. This is another FA Cup game, FA Cup third round on the 5th of January 2003 down at Molineux. And there was a feel-good factor at the time because we were in the Champions League. That was the season would come out at the first group stage with that late win at Feyenoord, and everybody was buzzing, and we were buzzing about, here's another competition, we might have a good run in, we're going to have a go at this one. And this game still baffles me to this day because you can't blame it on a changed team for the cup. I don't think it was a particularly weakened team. You might say he should have played Dabazas from the start instead of Andy O'Brien, perhaps, but that was probably about the only change you could make to the team sheet. Wolves were a division below her, and they'd gone down the route of picking up experience. That Paul Ince and Dennis Irwin and a big Nigerian striker called Ndar. And for some reason, we let them bully her for 30 minutes. The game kicked off. We're 1-0 down after 6 minutes. Knocked down from Ndar. And Ince, to be fair, hit a very good strike. And then we're 2-0 down after 28 minutes. And again, Ndar controlling the cross and then hitting it out to a lad called Kennedy, who hit an absolute belter from 18 yards. And then all of a sudden, after about half an hour, we woke up. And 40 minutes, Janice had a great finish after Shearer had been put through, I think, by Speed. And then just before half-time, Bellamy was brought down in the box by Julian Lescott. And Shearer did the business on this occasion, 2-2. So you go in half-time and you think, you know, this is on here. We've got out of jail a little bit. Let's just play the same way. But then by 10 minutes of the second half, and Dar's got a goal himself, and it's back to square one. And again, it took about 20 minutes to wake up in the second half. But then it was all Newcastle United. And this was, I think what sticks in my memory from this game was Julian Lescott in the second half. He cleared one off the line from Shearer. He cleared one off the line from a free kick from Robert, and then cleared the follow-up off the line as well. He just seemed to appear everywhere in that second half. And that was one of those games when he came to prominence as a potentially good young defender. Before he ended up at Sunderland, obviously. But he
appeared in Star Trek about that time as well, didn't he?
Aye, something like that, aye. Acting skills too. But he was,
thinking that looks like him.
I know there is, mate. The second half was all us for the last 20 minutes and all Lescott clearing off the line. So there he goes, another cup run damned and another little bit of expectation gone. But I can't explain that one. Sometimes you look at it and you think, oh, well, he played a weakened team. You know, you just couldn't explain it. You couldn't understand where the sleepiness and the being allowed to be bullied came from. But that for me, sums up trips against Wolves. They always seem to give you a hard fight. If nothing else, you've got to earn the right to play against them. And that's my second game.
100%. Okay, Steve Wilkinson.
Right, well, I'm going back to 1977, 17th of December 1977 for my second game. Newcastle 4, Wolves 0. So that sounds a good story, doesn't it? And I can't actually remember much about the game, but I really want to talk about the situation that we had then, because it's very reminiscent of probably what's gone on in the last season or so, because there was a lot of unrest. and it was because it was at the end of the era of, well, probably the end of Gordon Lee era, really, which had capitulated even further when he left and Richard Dennis took over. And even though we finished 5th the season before and qualified for Europe, this season Richard Dennis demonstrated why the dangers of bringing a coach rather than the manager into the top position, because you're not that great at signing players. Maybe you've managed them well, but there was a big split in the camp, as you might remember at that time. A lot of unrest with the board about what was going on, and it ended up after the game against Bastia with Richard Dennis being sacked and Bill McGarry, who himself had been a former manager at Wolves, quite a successful manager at Wolves. He got them into the Europe a couple of times, and he'd actually just come to us from, would you believe, manager of international club Saudi Arabia. Never heard of them, have you? But he came from Saudi Arabia to Newcastle, something you're not allowed to do these days, of course. But I think he was one of those sort of Joe Kinnear type signings where we thought, well, he's experienced, but he's not the fashionable manager we wanted to follow on from. Bear in mind, we'd all seen the Joe Harvey era when we'd had a modicum of good play and enjoyed it with Supermac, etc. And even though we had still some decent players left from what was there, but it was a lot of unrest. And Bill McGarry came in, and initially had a bit of a good start. We actually won 3 games in a row, and culminating with this 4-0 win over Wolves. But that was the end of the success, because ironically on the 17th of December, this was our last home win of the season, would you believe? We lost every other game at home for the rest of that season. And only winning one more game, which was just at the beginning of January, or beating Leeds away. And we ended up getting relegated, but with only 22 points. We finished second bottom of the first division. That was the time of a lot of unrest. We talking recently about Steve's video last week about the fans' activities that were going on with you guys and things with NUFC and UST in the past. Was when the fans forum, the Newcastle Supporters Association was set up, which I was involved with. Malcolm Dix and John Woff, who we've had on before. A lot of fans unrest, and again, troubles with the owners, and as I said, culminating in us going down with a peanut number of points. But this game, I can't remember the game, but it was a 4-0, goals from Irvin Natlis and Kenny Mitchell, who Steve mentioned. It was his first goal for the club, although I think he started playing the defence probably by the time the game that Steve was talking about. Tommy Craig and Tommy Cassidy in the second half. So it was a good win. As I say, I cannot remember much about the game, but there was just changes to the team all the time. At that time, McGarry was experimenting with various different players. We had new players in. Stuart Robinson, they also mentioned, a good winger, but he was a new player. We had another guy called Dennis Martin, who I can't even remember the name, but he played a handful of games. And so while we won that game, it was the start of the decline. We actually peaked after that game to our highest position in the season, apart from right at the beginning, when we peaked at 20th, which was still in the relegation zone, and we eventually finished 21st. So that was the second game of my memories of what the impact of Wolves had on our past.
Brilliant stuff. Some great recollections from the lads. Thanks very much for taking the time to do your research. And we're now going to look at celebrity fans and, of course, players that played for both teams. And quite a lot of celebrity fans. I was struggling last week, lads, but managed to find quite a few this week. So just for fun, see if you can guess who these people are.
Elgar.
It's Edward Elgar.
I knew you would know that, George.
Yeah.
Did you see him play, George?
I've heard him a few times, though. Sue Lawley.
Sue Lawley.
Infamous because of the Police song, of course. So lonely. Sue Lawley.
Oh, dear me.
And there we go.
That's one of the lads from Phoenix Nights.
Correct.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Tom, someone from Keenan.
That might have been his character's name. That's not his name.
Steve something.
Correct.
Oh, no.
give you half. I'm going to give you. I'll probably give you three.
Steve,
Well,
Steve
well done.
Edge.
Well done, Steve Edge. Yeah, you get a full point now.
Susie Perry.
Susie Perry.
That's right. It's a rather dazzling shirt.
Is it Mark Rhodes?
It's Mark Rhodes. Well done.
My favourite, Robert Plant.
Robert Plant.
Robert Plant.
That's Kevin Rowland from Dexys.
That's correct.
Eric Idle.
Eric Idle.
Eric Idle.
Beverly Knight.
Oh, very late, yeah.
Beverly Knight, yeah.
Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill.
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, he's rather. It's a rather dodgy one, that, but he is
Tenuous.
Yeah, tenuous.
Peter Powell. DJ.
Peter Powell.
Tennis
John
guy.
Lloyd.
John Lloyd.
John Lloyd. I'm making up for last week here, lads.
David Coleman.
David Coleman.
That's the lad from Popleat itself.
Clint Mansell.
There you go. That's the name.
Well done.
Dennis Irwin.
Dennis Irwin.
He's a musician. Oh. He's the one who doesn't sing in ELO.
Oh, you've got the band right.
But I can't remember his name.
Can't help
I think he's.
Mitch has got the band right.
Come on, Mr. Hasty. You should be getting these bands.
Is he a Barry?
He's not a Barry. I'm going to take that one. I think I've got it. Bevan.
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 Okay, we're into the players now. So, people who played for both teams and or managed or coached.
Bill McGarry.
Bill McGarry.
Bill McGarry.
Basong.
No.
Carl Court.
Correct.
Sorry. Carl Court. Aye.
Marlon Harewood.
Marlon Harewood.
Darren
Peacock.
No photos of Darren Peacock in a Wolves shirt, sadly.
Need to mull it over there. Ned Kelly.
Ned Kelly.
Ooh. Is that Peter With?
No. Often mistaken for Peter With, though.
Billy Rafferty.
Correct. Billy Rafferty.
That would be Basong.
It is.
The clues on the shirt.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. Budgie.
Ket Spire.
The Georgian mentalist.
Full house for you guys on the footballers. I managed to get one in on the celebs. Okay, 1 to 11s, guys. George, starting with you.
Okay, John Burridge, Seb Basong. I sneaked Paul Simpson as our former manager into the team at number 3. Joe Harvey, Darren Peacock, Mike Williamson, and then an old playing friend of mine, Ken Wimshurst at number 7, Carl Court, Marlon Harewood, Peter With, and David Kelly at 11. And for all time's sake, Bill McGarry is my manager.
Great stuff. Steve Hasty.
Right, I've got Bridge and Go. I've gone Peacock, Williamson and Basong at the back. I've stuck Joe Harvey in the middle as a half-back, holding together Ket Spire and Kelly. I then went for a front two of Carl Court and Rafferty, playing behind another front two of Harewood and Peter With. But two players I thought we should have mentioned too, who should have played for Newcastle but didn't, but played for Wolves. Wolves and lad Ray Hankin, George, if you remember Ray. Another lad, I believe. Wolves End Boys Club, an amazing player.
He
Went to
was.
Burnley, obviously, then Leeds United. The lad, I'm sure you'll remember, George, Jimmy Mullen, England international, born in Wolves, born in Newcastle. My nana always used to tell me that he was related to us in some way. Her mother, I think, was a Mullen. I've never ever done a family tree of that side of the family to find out, but it was certainly someone that used to get a mention. That guy played from 1937 to 1960 for Wolves, and never got in for Newcastle. But spent his entire career down there, which takes some doing when you think about it. A career spanning the war years and then finishing off in 1960. So 2 players that should have been there, and obviously we've gone for. I've gone for McGarry as a manager because I've already stuck Joe Harvey in the team.
Great stuff, Stu.
There was a goalkeeper, Jim Barron, as well, Steve.
Thanks, George. Stu.
Right, mine's a bit like what you used to say about Sam Fox, a bit top heavy. Got Burridge in goal, Williamson, Peacock, and Basong at the back. Then it's trying to form the midfielders that are forwards, but I've got Dinning with Kaspaya and Rafferty playing behind the front three of Marlon Harewood, Ned Kelly, and Colcourt, and with McGarry as the manager.
Okay, Mitch.
Almost identical 11 to Stu there for me, because there isn't a huge pool of players to pick from this week.
No, definitely not. And Steve Wilkinson, finishing off with you, mate.
Well, I'm glad some of the Steve and George have picked sort of local people, because I've done the same, but different people from you mentioned the back four, Budgie and Mike Williamson, Peacock, and Basong. I've put it left back, a lad called Derek Parkin, who played for Wolves, but if he'd been 10 years younger, he would have gone to the same school as me. So that's my claim to fame, that he could have played. He went to Thomas Addison, and by the time, if he'd been 10 years older, he would have there would have been a comprehensive, and he would have gone to Killingworth with me. So I put him in the team. Midfield, I've got Joe Harvey and Ketspire, and also a young lad who I was manager of when I used to run the Sunday afternoon Walker Youth Club, Mickey Gooding, who played for them. Him and his brother Chris played for Walker Youth Club at that time, and Mickey was a canny player, and he played for Wolves and a few other places. And up front, David Kelly, Peter Wyth, and Marlon Harewood, and again Bill McGarry as manager.
Great stuff, lads. Managed to hit it on the button with the timing. Thanks very much for that. Look forward to catching up with you next Wednesday for another retro show. Take care, lads. Good night.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
See you all. Bye.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's